Physical education is the most important subject in schools today. Physical education is the most important subject in schools, much more important than chemistry or English or anything. Other things about being a healthy human being, they absolutely have to teach kids how to play because they don't do that. But Mark Zuckerberg has taught kids how to play his way. And that's the absolute worst thing that's happening. So we have to have other outdoor activities available to the kids for every body type and for every interest.
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them, in their own words, to describe why they're wired the way they are, so that we all, former athletes and non-athletes, can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com. And when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes.
Good morning, this is Sifu Slim. I am coming to you live from just having gotten out of the Pacific Ocean, where it's about 63 degrees. It's October, it's Halloween tomorrow night. And so some of the brave are still out there navigating the ocean. And what I'm learning the more I age is that the mind over matter is so significant in the life of an athlete and a normal human being that you do things that are impossible. And I'm going to bring in from across the United States, Dr. Dan O'Neill, orthopedic surgeon, author, athlete, and many more things. Say hello, Dr. Dan, and tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, first of all, Steve, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I was not in the ocean this morning, but we were on a mountain bike ride, and our mountain bike place is closing after today, and they'll be opening up for cross-country skiing, hopefully, in another month. So, so everybody and their brother is out there trying to get in the last few runs, but it's great. I am an orthopedic surgeon, as you noted, and after about 10 years or so in the business, I realized that a lot of my athletes, in particular, I was missing something. And I was working with the U.S. ski team and some other organizations, Plymouth State College and such. And I went back to school and got a degree in exercise and sports psychology. And as the whole concept of this connection, this what I call the body-mind connection. So I call myself a physical sports psychologist when I'm wearing that hat, because it all starts with the body, and that's what so much of your writing and work has been discussing.
Yeah, when people look at me and they hear about my schedule on how I take care of myself, some of it is rather challenging. And I am a person who admittedly has the bone structure of Michael Jackson and Gilligan. And I put some more beef on than those two people. But the mistake that I made in my late teens and early 20s was actually trying to change my physique into more of a linebacker build. And what I got were tired joints, clicks in my joints at a very young age, and sluggishness. My tennis serve went down, my golf went down. And I think that one of the most important things I learned is go back to your body type and use the things that you're good at. So I am actually a very good dancer. I was a professional mascot for 4 years and Sacramento, California. And I realized that, using those things that Michael Jackson knew early on, how to move your body like a snake and be able to stop and pause in midair and those types of things, that made much more sense to me. Tell me if in your life and in your training of athletes, has this ever come up, and how have you handled that, using your own body type to your advantage in your wellness?
Yeah, we've talked about that. That's a great point that very few people mention, because let's face it, in America in particular, as a boy, you're jammed into football, and truly one of the regrets in my life is I played football in high school, which I had no business doing, and I should have been playing soccer. But we're jammed into certain sports in football, baseball, and basketball. And if you're not good at one of those sports, certainly when I was a kid, life was a little bit tougher. Now there are so many more things out there, but still, and in the schools, there's still, there's not a lot of mountain bike teams or ski teams or yoga or dance teams or all these other things. But we definitely talk about that with parents and with our athletes. Where are you best going to fit? Because that is a big deal, and kids are going to get frustrated if they might not be good at a certain sport that their parents wanted them to excel in. And in the old days, it might not have been such a big deal, but nowadays, everything about my life is concerned with a child not wanting to be active and not wanting to be outside, and that they're going to get into the couch and in front of two-dimensional entertainment and social media and video games and become truly addicted, and that's the end. And that's really what I'm all about at this point.
Dr. Dan, thanks for sharing that. At the end of our workout today, we did some stadiums, going down the steps at the stadium at City College here, and there was a soccer game that was going on, and it were 16-year-old young men who were playing, and it was a pretty big event. And one of the athletes' younger brothers was there. He was about 12, and all of his family were watching the game. They were enjoying it, and guess what he was doing during the game?
Stadiums with you guys?
He was he was playing on his iPhone
Yeah. Oh,
with his older brother. Now, from growing up, when I grew up, that any kid that was older than us, brother, cousin, kid in the neighborhood who was able to take us under his wing, we all looked up to those people, and we learned from them, and we enjoyed watching them do their sports, because someday we could try to step into those shoes. Now the iPhone is so powerful, and as a sports psychologist, you can share how addiction works, how you can't get enough of the digital entertainment, the digital news, who's wanting to speak to me right now through whatever format. Maybe if you would share what you've talked to parents about, and how to moderate some of that behavior.
yeah, you make a good point, Sifu, because parents just don't understand. And I use the word addiction all the time because it's a powerful word, but that's what's gone on. And there are literally thousands and thousands of people in Northern California whose job it is to try to addict our children to two-dimensional entertainment and to make
Yeah.
sure they never put down that iPhone. And with this little boy, it seemed to have worked. When I'm covering a football game, hopefully a lot of the kids that aren't paying attention to the game are over in the other field throwing the ball around or kicking a ball around or something. But the absolute worst thing is the video games and the two-dimensional social media stuff. And parents, I just can't tell you enough. It is a true addiction. If your child is 12 years old, 13 years old, and on these machines all the time, they are addicted. And to get them off now is a big problem. So my solution is never to let them get addicted, to make sure they stay addicted to Mother Nature, which is, again, I know what you've been preaching and so many other people have been preaching. Keep kids addicted to Mother Nature, never let them lose what I call their physical identity. And that way, when they do go on the iPhone, it doesn't last long. They get bored pretty quickly because they'd rather be out in the woods, riding their bikes, skiing, kicking a ball, doing something else.
Thanks, Dr. Dan. I have a reach out, and you're welcome to share your reach outs for any initiatives that that you are working on currently. One of mine is I want to interview an expert who's an expert on the aging process from a biological and a cellular and a chemical level. So somebody who's got some exercise physiology background. I don't want like a geriatric doctor who knows how to handle age 80 to 120. I really want to know someone who studied the cellular, the browning of the cells, the browning of tissue, those types of things, because I'm going through that right now, about to turn 60, and I'm feeling much different than I did 5 years ago. I still have the mindset to do the right thing, which doesn't mean the excessive thing, but I'd really like to talk to somebody who can break that down. And maybe you know someone who's written a book on it, or another doctor with whom I could share a conversation. Does anyone come to mind right now?
Nobody comes to mind, but I'll have to think about that, because that is, it's such a tough, for lack of a better word, just a tough subject, because there's so much we don't understand about the aging process. You can talk about the telomeres in our brains and so many other things. And, people are aging, for lack of a better word, at a different pace, and again, this is what you've been talking about, that whole idea of maintenance and consistency in our exercises, because we really can, on some level, affect our aging process. Not on a great level. At the end of the day, as I tell my patients, most of your problems are coming from getting old and from your parents, So if you have great parents, your aging is going to be a lot better than some other people. But with good diet and with maintenance of exercise, et cetera, we really can make a difference. And every study that shows anybody starting an exercise program, it doesn't matter what age they are, even 90-year-olds, when they start an exercise program, we see improvements in health indices for sure. So the problem is the people that often will start talking to about it, with all due respect, are the Doug Flutys and the Frank Thomases out there who have something to sell. And that's what makes it so hard for the public. So, when I look at my journal from the American College of Sports Medicine every month, they talk about a lot of these things. But it's a real tough subject to drill down and get good data and good studies on, because there's a lot of flack out there.
So Dr. Dan, you've written on physical education, and I actually did some time as a physical education instructor, teacher. And what I tried to impart on these people is that all the things that your coaches are teaching you here, they were keeping notes. So not only did you have to go to health class where you took notes, but in this particular PE class, the instructors had set it up so that the students would bring a notebook and they'd be responsible for the things that they were learning, and also to bring in some outside things and share that with the class. So it wasn't just picking up a ball and learning skills. It was really learning about a life skill of, acquiring knowledge of physical education, which to me, it doesn't stop when you're 18. What are your thoughts on that?
Physical education is the most important subject in schools today. Physical education is the most important subject in schools, much more important than chemistry or English or anything, because our children are not getting physical education anywhere else. And they're not learning what you're talking about, any physical literacy types of things, but they're just not playing. Children today don't know how to play. That little boy you saw at the soccer game, he doesn't know how to play. And I would venture to say his brother might not know how to play. His brother is out on the soccer field kicking the ball around and playing soccer, but somebody's blowing a whistle. If somebody wasn't blowing a whistle, would those boys be out there kicking that ball around? And that's the problem. So today, physical education has to not only teach the physical literacy and the other things about being a healthy human being, they absolutely have to teach kids how to play, because they don't do that. But Mark Zuckerberg has taught kids how to play his way. And that's the absolute worst thing that's happening. And that's what we have to fight against. And I'm sorry to keep pounding on that, but it's absolutely the truth. So physical education, and in my book, Survival of the Fit, talks about we need physical education for every child, every day, every year of school, full stop. It's just no, there's no, again, I don't care if we need to take some time away from math and science and English and social studies, take some of that time and make sure these kids get physical education every day, because that is the most important subject, because we are dealing with a health crisis with these children. We have an obesity crisis in this country. And the kids that aren't obese, so many of them have pediatric dynapenia where they have no muscle or bone mass. So unless we get them up and moving 45 minutes a day with PE, then, another 30 or 45 minutes with recess, now we've got something. And now we're strengthening their physical identity that they were born with. That's 180 days a year. And then hopefully after that, the parents will pick up on those other days.
Dr. Dan, tell us about your book and what website is a good place for people to pick up a copy of your book.
So the book is called Survival of the Fit: How Physical Education Ensures Academic Achievement and a Healthy Life. And, key there in the subtitle, academic achievement. We can't have STEM geniuses without physical fitness. Children that are not, our children right now are not physically fit enough to learn. And in 2002, with No Child Left Behind, we took time away from PE and gave it to math and English to try to increase those scores, and nothing happened. And nothing happened because in 2007, they introduced the iPhone, and things have been going south since then. So a healthy brain depends on a healthy body. And that's why I call this the body-mind connection, not the other way around. You can't do anything. Your brain is stimulated by your body, stimulated by movement, stimulated by exercise, stimulated by play. And that's where we're going to make the next STEM geniuses. That's where we're going to make the next Nobel Prize winners. And with that, we have to have fit children. And unless we have physical education for every child every day, it's just not going to happen, because it's not happening. And everything is going the other direction. And again, I know your listeners have seen this every week in the newspaper. Obesity levels are up, academic achievement is up, COVID put us back another 6% on whatever indice you want to look at. It's just incredible. We've got to make a change. So survivalofthefit.net, my website, has a lot of downloadable letters, templates for letters you can send to your administrators, principals, teachers, mayor, governor, and let them know that this is what we need to do in America and more and more around the world.
Thanks for sharing that, Dr. Dan. So one of the things I sent you via email was about my wake-up call when I somehow realized that this transformational fitness was maybe 98% of the marketplace. And I think I learned that sometime in the late 90s. Transformational fitness, weight loss, get fit, improve skills, bigger, faster, stronger. Those are all transformational fitness things which fit with certain criteria that people want and need to excel at certain things they're doing. But maintenance fitness, which takes you from me in the 70s at age 18, where you're fit, graduating from high school, and allows you to maintain a reasonable facsimile of that age 18 state for the rest of your life and have fun doing it in the process, not letting yourself get like the garden that's been fallow for 5 years and then try to reinvigorate the microbiome of the soil and to start planting things and then bring the ladybugs back to eat the aphids. All of that's a lot of work to plant a garden that's brand new, but to take a garden that's got a microbiome with some rotting hay or straw over it that's been fallow for 1 or 2 years and reinvigorating that is very easy to do. So you got to maintain that for lack of a better word, microbiome of the mind, body, and spirit. It's all got to be part of your joy and movement and your recreation, and the way you take care of your teeth, the way you take care of your car. You do the same thing with your body, and your body comes back with gratitude and thanks you for that, and everything works. How cool would that be?
I love that. And that's exactly what I'm trying to point out in my book. Um, you come out of the womb with a physical identity. You come out of the womb being that person that you're talking about. And as long as we don't let that fall by the wayside with years of inactivity and years of bad food, things are going to go well. And like you say, you can always scrape things off if you've had a bad patch, whether at work or whatever. But to let things go. USA Today had a great 6-part series. Each day they took a different part of the obesity crisis and looked at solutions and ideas. And one day they talked about surgery. The other day they talked about medicine, taking medicine, to not be obese. The other day they talked about Weight Watchers and they talked about fat shaming and these other things. What they didn't talk about is we're not supposed to be fat. We are not genetically programmed to be fat. We are programmed to be hunter-gatherers, as you talk about in your books. We're programmed to be, we haven't changed in the last 200,000 years. And all of this, all of our problems are from society. They're not from bad thyroid glands or our parents in that regard. And so if we don't let our physical identity lapse, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish with my having children do PE every day, every year of school. If we don't let our physical identity lapse, we won't have any of these problems, that we have now. Because, right, we'll have the odd holiday season or whatever it might be, but we know, after a few weeks of bad eating, I got to get outside. I got to get a, good walk. I got to go surfing. I got to go mountain biking, and because that's our natural, that's our primitive brain working. That's our natural state.
Dr. Dan, I out of all of my writing, which on the wellness subject goes from 2009 through now, and maybe 5,000 pages of material, some of it heavily edited for books and articles. And you come across something that you think might be your own finding out of all that stuff. Jack LaLanne did his thing, Covert Bailey, Dan O'Neill, all these people have done their thing. And so the information is out there, but I came across one thing that I think might be my idea, and I'll share it with you. I call it the middle school disconnect. So if you go to a kid's playground, they've got one for the kids ages 3 to 6, let's say. And then they've got another one for kids that are 6 to 10. And after that, there's no playground for the kids that are developing adolescence, right? So that's my first thing, and that's pretty obvious. When you go to a middle school, which is the kids up to age 14, from age, let's say 11 or 12 to 14, now you have some chin-up bars, right? And then you may have had in our era a pegboard where you could climb that wall with the pegs, and sometimes you had the sliding pegs where you couldn't pull that out, which was probably good because the kids couldn't steal the peg and then throw it at each other. So we had all these options. So the middle school disconnect is what I came up with, which says that only the athletic kids get into the chin-ups once you get to be this adolescent body, girls putting on hips and boobs and guys putting on shoulders or bigger butts or whatever, wherever they put it on. Only the athletic kids are the ones out there doing the chin-ups for like challenging each other, like a challenge match or part of their football after school activity. Otherwise, it's just like a test in PE where you've got to, they write down on a clipboard. The shame factor that you mentioned is the kid who can't do one chin up or can only do 2, whereas the athletic kid can do 18 of those chin ups or pull ups. So the middle school disconnect is something that I think is a big problem. It takes people into this performance thing instead of the playful thing that you did when you were on the jungle gyms as a kid. Maybe share with me what you think about my world-class Einsteinian finding.
Yeah, I actually love that. And it kind of gets back to what we were talking about having multiple options for kids as they get older to keep them interested. Because, like you say, not every kid is going to grow up with a football body, or not every kid is going to grow up with a gymnastics body, and the more options we have, the better. And the other thing I liked, the word you used was competition. And that absolutely has to be taken out of our schools, because we're losing, as you say, it's just another example of the 80-20 rule. We're losing 80% of the kids because they can't do the bloody pull-up and they can't do these things. And so 80% of the kids then are not doing organized sports after the age of 15. And again, they're going into the couch and they're being attracted to that stuff. So we have to have other outdoor activities available to the kids for every body type and for every interest. And if it sounds, Danny, how are you going to pay for this? Well, I'll tell you how I'll pay for that. I'll pay for that with the 80% of our budget that is now being used for competitive school sports. Competitive school sports, and this is not going to make me popular in California or in Texas, but in competitive school sports, 80% of our budget is for that, of our athletic budget, gym budget, but only 20% of the kids are playing. In the survey I did for Survival of the Fit, it was actually 16% of kids. So we're spending huge dollars. One of the examples I have in one of my talks is Texas just built a $75 million football stadium. $75 million. Half of the children in Texas can't play football, right? Half the girls don't play football. So we're spending money that we just can't afford right now because we have an obesity crisis, we have a health crisis, we have a mental health crisis in this country, in our children. We've got to get them out to Mother Nature. And we can't make it, our school sports have got to be for everybody. They have to be activities rather than sports. They shouldn't be competitive, and they should be fun. And everybody's got to be involved because everybody needs to be involved to be happy and healthy.
So I'm glad you mentioned the where the money's going. I've watched over the last few years the rise of the pharmaceutical industry, which is nothing new. It's been rising since World War II, and it's a very powerful force. And I interviewed a doctor last week, Dr. Saunders from Santa Barbara, and he said, we were talking about the lack of nutrition education for MDs going through their program, which is very limited. And he said, it's not based on wellness. The learning curve is based on medicine and intervention for problems. It's not based on promotion of wellness. So I said, did you know that the research when my father was in college and afterwards, if he had wanted to be a doctor, there was the pharmaceutical companies were still spending a lot of their money on research and development. And did you know that now they're spending it much more so on advertising? So not coming up with new things, but advertising the things that are out there that they want to hammer into us. And we're very susceptible to advertising. What are your thoughts on some of that educational and advertising propaganda?
It's absolutely horrible. And parents, if you ever watch Saturday morning TV with your kids, you'll see, and it's in the billions and billions of dollars are being spent to brainwash our children to buying these ultra processed foods and bugging you in the supermarket to buy this poison. And you're absolutely right. And that's why I say in the USA Today article, 1 day was spent on medications. The pharmaceutical companies trying to give you medicines to not be obese. When again, it's just the exact wrong way. Now, they did have a day talking about nutrition in this USA Today series, and because that is just so important. But it's the two-headed monster is, the two-dimensional entertainment, the social media, the video games, television, and the other head is the ultra-processed foods. And our children are absolutely sick. The example I give is when I was a kid, My parents, every week we go to the supermarket on a Saturday, carton of Kent and a carton of Lucky Strike cigarettes. My father, the Lucky, and this was the 60s, folks. And this is how the world works. And so my parents, they didn't want us. They knew, in the 60s, the Surgeon General finally gave those warnings and said, we don't want you smoking. If I started smoking when I was a teenager or 20 years old, I was going to get sick when I was 60. I was going to get lung cancer and emphysema 40 years later. Our children are sick now. They are not only addicted to two-dimensional entertainment and ultra-processed foods, but they have diabetes. 25+% of our children have diabetes or pre-diabetes. They have high blood pressure. They have all these things we used to call adult diseases. They have mental health issues. 50% of college freshmen this year on a nationwide survey said that they had mental health concerns. 50% of kids coming in. That's not for nothing. That is because of the bad food that these kids have eaten and the addiction to these screens. It's a real issue. And again, we made the move with cigarettes, but we don't seem to be making the move with food because, as you point out, they're spending billions and billions of dollars. And even Michelle Obama, when she tried to do something while President Obama was in the White House, not much happened.
It's very, very challenging. All these things, they're powerful forces in play. And rather than seeing kids have space to go out and do their thing and explore and discover wonderful things that you and I had the chance to do growing up, they're living inside drywall and they're not moving. And so next thing I wanted to talk to you about is this idea of movement as a penalty for being obese and movement as a penalty for being sedentary, where people in our generation, we couldn't sit still and our teachers thought, the entire classroom had a mental problem because we were running to get to everywhere and we were excited all the time. We had all this wonderful energy, and thank goodness we had recreation to go blow off some steam. We had PE every day. It wasn't optional, and we didn't want it to be optional. We loved PE. It was our favorite class. And now, when you go to a high school, for example, in Santa Barbara, the teacher has to urge these kids with this loving care and root them on to make it one lap at a fast walk around the track because of sedentism and because of obesity, it's so sad to me. I don't know what I could do to change that paradigm. I'm doing everything I can to bring this joy and movement message out. What else can be done in your opinion, Dr. Dan?
And that's it, Sifu. When I meet people like you, and I know, and there are so many of us out there. I gave a talk to a group of PE teachers in India a few months ago. We're out there, and parents and teachers. Let me be clear about my program, because if you go in and you tell your sophomores in high school, guess what, kids? We're going to have PE every day, and you're going to be moving, and you're going to be sweating, and you're going to be running, and you're going to have your heart rates up for 45 minutes, and then at recess, same thing. It's not going to work. There's going to be a revolution. It's going to be a
pushback.
So what we have to do with the program is started in kindergarten. Now, kindergartens, as you say, do not need much to get them going. Mm-hmm. They still have their physical identities intact. So then the following year, it's kindergarten and first grade. Following year of kindergarten, first, second, third grade. And we keep going like that. And then if the fourth graders came to school and you told them, sorry, kids, the budget got changed, no more PE every day, once a week if you're lucky, there'd be a different revolution. There'd be a different explosion, because they're used to it, because they're primitive brains, because they're human beings, they're human animals, they're hunter-gatherers. That's what they expect. So, right, this generation, as sad as it might be, this generation might be lost. And the folks in Silicon Valley have won this battle. And we might have to let this one go. Our children have a shorter lifespan than we did. How horrible is that? This generation has a shorter lifespan, and that's not changing. Those numbers keep going the other way until we make a change, in society and we start taxing unhealthy foods, and we start making sure kids have PE, and we start making it harder to eat unhealthy foods. So guess what? How hard is it to buy cigarettes right now? And how hard is it, and once you buy the cigarettes as an adult, how hard is it to smoke? At every college, at every school campus, at every hospital campus, you have to get off campus to smoke. And that's, a pain in the neck. And there's the same guy out there, talking about his fantasy football team, and it's, so we made it hard to smoke. And guess what? Smoking has gone way down. Let's do the same with some of this bad food. We beat Philip Morris. We can take the battle to Ronald McDonald. We can't just keep giving up on this, because Michael Bloomberg in New York City tried to outlaw these huge sugary drinks. Yeah, yep. and he got pilloried. But that's what we need. We need to do that. I know it sounds like a nanny state, and people don't like that, but we did the nanny state with cigarettes, and nobody's saying that was a bad move.
Dr. Dan, I'm blessed to live in a smoke-free city. Can you imagine that if you're in a park or at the beach in Santa Barbara? Somebody could. I've never seen it happen, but I'm sure they're out there telling people you can't vape and smoke. It's a smoke-free city. I don't know how many are out there that are running with this type of a program. I don't even remember when that was instituted. I just remember seeing signs, and to now be aware when somebody has a big vape puff come by me, how it affects me, because it is so rare. Have you seen anything like that out and about?
We've just seen it, across the world, really, with cigarettes. And I have a lot of family in Ireland. I get over there every couple of years, and in the old days, the pub would be literally filled with smoke, and there would be a line down near your shins of that smoke-filled room, literally. And then they just did away with it. And at our local pub here in my town, I was telling the barman about this, how Ireland has gotten rid of cigarettes. He says, "Oh, if they ever did that here, it would be a disaster. We'd lose all kinds of business, et cetera, et cetera." But of course that didn't happen, and they finally did get rid of cigarettes here in the pubs and restaurants in New Hampshire, and the business didn't go down; it went up because people didn't want to go to a pub or a restaurant and come home smelling like an ashtray. So good for Santa Barbara. And just like, they talk about plastic bags, they talk about recycling plastic and glass and aluminum, all these things that people say, "Oh, we can't do it." And then somehow we do it. And it's better. Anybody who has, and we don't have this in New Hampshire, but if you go across the border to Vermont and New York State, they have aluminum and they have a deposit. For sure in New York, I'm not sure about Vermont. They have deposit. You don't see any cans or bottles on the ground in New York because they have a deposit for that. At least I think they still do, but they used to. And we can make these big changes. We are not incapable as Americans of making these big changes. The rest of the world has done it. Santa Barbara has done it. We can do these things.
Thank you, Dr. Dan. I have a question that goes through both of your medical background, sports psychology and orthopedics. And this is the idea of variety. Now, I am the canary in the coal mine. I'm very highly sensitive. It's called HSP, highly sensitive personality. So when I go down the cleaning solvents aisles at Kmart, the laundry detergents, that wave of odor hits me. Those chemicals hit me pretty darn hard. Bright lights get me. Loud music gets me. So I am kind of a good canary in the coal mine. I'm also helpful to my own body because I realize that, hey, after doing 2 laps of freestyle, it's good for me to throw in the breaststroke, the backstroke, the butterfly, mix that up because I can feel the what would I call that? The stiffness starting to hit me in the muscles and the joints. So instead of powering through like a lot of people do and doing 20 or 30 laps of freestyle and working on their turn and their breathing, I'm saying throw that variety in there because my joints need that. My muscles need that. Tell me about your thoughts from both of those. One, what is the damage on not doing variety and a repetitive stress thing? And two, why can't some people psychologically get out of their training? This is my stroke. I got to do my stroke. This is the one I competed at in high school. And then 2 years later, at age 48 or 56, they're in surgery for rotator cuff problems and other problems regarding that repetitive stress injury.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the data is irrefutable. We have the data on this. We know, first of all, with young people, starting with them, the kids that are playing one sport, the injury rates is sky high. And our sports medicine data is absolutely clear. So not only from an injury standpoint, so I was talking to a professional baseball team, a major league team general manager a couple of years ago. All things being equal, they have a 6'2" pitcher from the University of Maine versus the University of Miami. Everything being equal, they're taking the kid from Maine. Why? Because that kid from Maine hasn't thrown as many pitches in his first 18 years. So, and what we're seeing, I took care of Burke Mountain Academy, a ski academy for many years. What we saw there was in the recent years, the kids were not as good as athletes because they didn't have that variety that you're talking about. They weren't doing all kinds of sports and all kinds of activities. They were just ski racing. And so they were, not only were they not as good at ski racing because they didn't have that balance in their lives, but they didn't, they couldn't do the other sports and they would have injuries and such because of that. My other favorite story is my a buddy who's a dentist, and I had this conversation with him years ago, and we were talking. He says, I go to the gym every day. I've been doing the same routine for like 3 or 4 years. I'm not getting any stronger. It's just great. It's like, let me think about what you just said. I've been doing the same routine for 4 years. I want to answer that question. And so absolutely. My last thing on that is all of my male patients should be doing yoga. All of my adult male patients should be doing yoga, and all of my adult female patients should be in the weight room, because it's just they do the opposite. So, they work to their strengths. The guys like going in there and pushing these big weights, but they'd really be better off working on flexibility. And the women do the flexibility, but they'd really be better off, doing some resistive training. So absolutely. And you gotta just mix it up, keep challenging our bodies.
So the idea of variety is really important. And this morning, I'll just give you a little example of what I did. So there was on a tree by the beach, there were hanging exercises, there were knee ups, there were stretches, there were neck exercises, just using my own body weight, all these types of things. And then there's rolling from front to back with the tennis ball for plantar fascia, getting some mobility into that. So I have to do all that. And then I do special stretches for plantar fascia because I'm going to go out on a run through the campus and I'm going to be doing stairs. And I want my body to work well during that time. And I certainly don't want to aggravate past injury. So it's amazing how much of my exercise is therapeutic in nature, just to maintain things and to provide therapy and remediation for problems that I've gone through before. So I did all that. Then this run, kind of a stair run and some straight run and up and down through this wonderful hilly campus at City College in Santa Barbara. And then some stadiums. Going down those steps is definitely really helping me prepare for my ski trip in Colorado. And people say, oh, you affluent bugger, you going skiing in Colorado. Well, let me tell you something about Colorado and recreational sports. Golf, tennis, and skiing are considered recreational sports. And they were for me at age 28, no question about it. I had my way with some of those sports. It was a joy. But let me tell you, at almost 60, how much work it is to run and get that Roger Federer stroke on the tennis court, and to keep up with a stroke that's become so much more challenging to me Now, same thing with skiing. I'm worried about, I don't want to fall. I wouldn't say I'm worried, but I make sure I don't fall. So every move I'm making out there is not really recreational. It's fun to be in the snow, don't get me wrong, but the skiing portion of it is not recreational. I'll say the same thing for golf. It's a lot of work and it's very dangerous sport to go at whacking golf balls on the range unless if I'm not completely prepared and my body is feeling 100%. Tell me what your thoughts are on some of this recreational mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. So the two things we all are losing with age are flexibility and balance. And so that's why it is important, not only the flexibility, as we touched on, but the balance things and doing skiing, doing tennis, doing things that are not just getting on your, a Peloton bike or an indoor bike or an indoor rower or whatever. It might keep your cardiovascular, but it's not, helping your flexibility and balance. The other thing I would say to your listeners, to give you guys a little bit of a break here. Well, two things actually. Number one, there was a famous study a number of years ago that decided it took 28 hours in a day to be healthy. So, and that didn't include going to work. So if we do our stretching and do our meditation and wash our teeth and brush our hair and do all the things we're supposed to do for health, it's 28 hours a day, and that was many years ago. The other thing is, again, I like to walk the walk when I can, but I haven't been doing a good job. And I just had this conversation with my wife. I'm going back to yoga this Thursday as my first day, but I was going before COVID hit. And once a week, and then I would try to do a little bit, on another few days, and I was doing a good job. COVID came, knocked that down. So you guys can do the numbers. It's been that many years since I've been back to the yoga, but I'm ready to get back, and I'm trying to take my own medicine for sure. So yeah, it's not easy, but the other thing I didn't touch on about doing the same sport and doing the same thing is the mental burnout. You want to keep things fun, you want to keep things interesting, and that's what I love about living in Four Seasons. That again, now our mountain bike. I love November for mountain biking because of the leaves are down and such, but our mountain biking is ending soon. Okay, so then you pick up the skis or you do other things, ideally. And so, yeah, it just keeps you fresh and it keeps you looking forward to that next season.
Thanks, Dr. Dan. So I'm picking it up a notch in my training, especially the running portion and the stairs portion of my training, my squats, my agility, my balance, core skiing. So the one of the main things I do with skiing is because I do this Jack LaLanne type fitness every day and do every bathroom break, I'll do some sort of a stretch or a movement thing. So I'm getting as much movement as I can for a sedentary writer, because writing and research is a very sedentary activity, phone calls, etc. So I'm doing all these things to, I don't like the word trick, but it's a good word. It tricks my body into thinking it's a hunter-gatherer who's got to do movement for survival, right? And so I do all that stuff. And then the ski trip, which is a once-a-year deal, is this big blow-off of steam for all this hard Jack LaLanne daily fitness that I do all along. And it gives me this spark so I can do all that training with this ultimate goal in mind. So yes, I have the Zen mentality in order to do the arduous task of this physical fitness program every day. It's not easy for me, but if you get into the Zen mindset, it makes it doable. And then I have this ski trip where I know I want to be 100% for that activity. And I get to go down the slopes with people who do it 4 months a year. I do it 2 weeks a year, let's say, and I get to go down the slopes with these people who do it 4 months per year or longer and hang with them on the slopes that I can do. I mean, that to me, nothing wrong with stroking the ego, saying I paid my dues and I can hang with you graceful athletes who really know what they're doing, like our friend Dan Egan, who's a great skier.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points there. The first thing is if you have that goal, if you have that impetus on a macro level, I never had a hip fracture that I saw in the ER and operated on. If that person told me I've got to get better because my grandson's getting married and I'm going to dance at the wedding. Every 100% that person would dance at that wedding. So having that goal, having something to give you that impetus to do that activity every day is really brilliant. And so sorry. And Chuck, for me, it's the Tour of the Battenkill. We have this local bike race, and that's in May. So getting on an indoor trainer, in January or February is the worst. But you know what? I've got this race coming up in 3 months and 4 months, and that really is great. The other thing, though, I would say on the other side of that, and the one I always remember is a congresswoman's husband, and I don't remember her name. This was maybe 10 years ago. He died on Mount Everest. He was 70 years old, and he thought, well, I'm a really tough guy, and I don't doubt he was a tough guy, and I don't doubt, Sifu, he could have beat the crap out of the two of us at once, at the age of 70. But guess what? It's Mount Everest, and you're 70 years old. So there are certain things that we have to give ourselves permission to say, we don't need to do this at the age of 70 or at the age of 65, or, and we can set limits for ourselves, and that's okay too. So, because at the end of the day, it has to be fun and it has to be healthy. And, it can't be a death march. I went to my first Ironman triathlon this year over at Lake Placid, and it was a death march. There were 50 people there that were racing, and the rest of the people were not having fun. And the rest of the people were not doing something healthy. Their training, I don't doubt, was healthy, but that day was not healthy. And to me, again, this doesn't make me popular with a lot of people, but to me, that just doesn't make sense. That just doesn't make sense, because when the medical tent is filled at an event, that to me does not say health. That says something else.
Yeah, I look at people who are interested in the competition side and the improving their times side. Now, that to me is a little bit different than me wanting to take 5 shots off of my golf game by learning how to play the game a little bit better. If you're trying to improve your time with running, and you were pretty good at 18, and then you're 35 or 45, and you're saying, I want to get my running speed down. What is the reason that you want to get your running speed down? I want to have better proprioception. I want to have the right amount of running for the condition that I'm in and the goals that I have around sports and wellness. So I'm a wellness athlete first, and competition may fall in there somewhere down the line. But I don't need to beat myself. I don't need to beat anybody else. If I'm running a 5-mile race or a 10-mile race, I want to be doing great proprioception and not tripping over rocks and other people on that race. It doesn't matter where I finish. I'm going to finish where I finish. And I'm not winning any money from this. And I'm just happy that that day went well, and I can hug somebody at the end of the race. I'm a different type of person than I think a lot of the go for the gusto type people might be.
Yeah, and I'm with you, but don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm a competitive person. I like competition. When I'm in these, I used to do some bike racing, and when I still do that race, I want to do my best. But like you say, now I want to do my best, and I know that a lot of my competition out there are, maybe they're retired and they're going down and training in Florida and doing all this stuff, and that's brilliant if that makes them happy, and if that makes you happy as an athlete. I think that's great, and if that's what gets you out of bed in the morning. But again, as Sifu, as you're emphasizing, as everything that you've written and talk about emphasizes, it's really about the health and the feeling good and being able to get up out of bed that next day feeling great. One of the things that you've recommended that I'm trying to employ is that stretching at the end of the day, before you go to bed and such. And I just love that. And it's just right, adding in those new things, those new healthy habits. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. again, I want to keep getting back to my book. We're having conversations that our children, don't understand. We're having conversations that the kids born in 2022 will have no concept about in 50 years, because it's just not going to exist for them, because they're not going to have even begin to have the health. The person out there that those 50 and 60-year-olds out there with obesity at least have some bone mass and some muscle mass from their youth. Our children today, if we keep going the way we're going, when they get to 50 or 60, they're not thinking about competition. They're not thinking about health. They're not thinking about anything, because they don't have any protoplasm. They don't have the cells and the physiology to support anything. And it's really going to be sad.
Is your the Alpine Clinic, is that in Grafton County, New Hampshire?
No, it's Alpine is all over the North Country of New Hampshire. We have a number of clinic locations, and so that's where I do my doctoring. And so Bristol is just a next town away, and I see patients down there. But yeah, we're all over the North Country, and it is. We do have a lot of good knowledge about so many of these aspects of sports medicine and sports psychology and exercise physiology. But again, my worry is that there's just going to be this big chunk of our population that it's not even a question.
One thing that that I get out of this thing that I think is irrefutable, if the young people take this up, is your body knows. And since I do mine in the morning, typically, your body knows on the deepest level in your biochemistry, and your unconscious mind knows that your body has done something that's wonderful. And then all of the cells doing the repairing, they're growing, all the things that they do, allowing all of the oxygen flow, the rebuilding, the telomeres, all these things. It knows 24 hours from then, and sometimes 48 hours from then, that something really good happened when I was doing my thing, and then in the post activity. It just knows that. So that's this wonderful thing that's going on. So you talk about sports psychology. When you're doing wellness type of activities, and it's not a painful hitting each other in football, but it's a wellness activity with some challenging parts to it, you're feeling that in the unconscious mind and in the body for such a long time that you can't argue with it, that feeling of goodness and expending energy. And then having your food, if you have some good food and nutrition coming in, it goes to where it's needed. And so it's this wonderful symbiotic relationship of lifestyle and activity that it's irrefutable. And if you can stay on that and get addicted to that part of the wellness and the feeling well thing, I think it can carry you a long way, Dr. Dan.
Absolutely, and that's it. But this is what we are pre-programmed to do. Like you say, and I do the same thing. I have my yoga mat behind me here. So tomorrow morning at 6 a.m, I'll be up doing my stretches, getting my body going, and I'll have the radio on, listen to the weather, and just start to wake up everything, right? That body-mind connection. And without that, and then I'm ready for the shower, and then I'm ready to start my day. But it's in our DNA. We are hunter-gatherers. And that's what I have to keep reminding people. This is what we're pre-programmed to do. After Thanksgiving dinner, people go for a walk, for the one time a year they do that. Well, you should do that after every dinner, because guess what? It feels good, and your body feels better after that. Any of that kind of motion that, like you say, doesn't have to be tearing down your cells. Your body responds, your brain responds, everything responds so positively to it. It's just wonderful. And again, we're being fed, no pun intended, we're being fed misinformation from these other places. We're being told, no, eat this bad food, no, be a spectator, watch the football games and drink a lot of beer and eat a lot of wings, and children, stay on Call of Duty, and here we have a new Call of Duty or whatever these games the kids are playing, and that's not what we are as human beings. That's not what we are as hunter-gatherers. And it doesn't take much to, as you say, to stimulate all those positive processes.
Dr. Dan, what are you doing starting in April of 2023?
In terms of, am I supposed
What's
to?
your, you don't have a new book that you're working on right now, or do you?
No. So the new book is Survival of the Fit, and that came out a year or so ago.
Okay.
So we're just really working hard, taking that message out there. I gave a talk Friday down in Portsmouth at the New Hampshire Medical Society. I'm going to be giving a talk to the Connecticut Physical Education Convention in 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks down in Southbury, Connecticut. So basically, I'm just going around now and trying to work this book and wedging in between my medical practice, and I'm cutting down on that to really work on this, on what I call this physical education revolution, and getting the word out there for that.
So the current book you wrote is for adults, correct?
The current book I wrote is for adults. It has in it section for gym teachers, to follow, a simple, basically a fun, high energy, no broken glasses kind of PE programs for elementary, middle, and high schoolers. But it really is a template for you to take Survival of the Fit and throw it on the desk of your administrator or of your governor or of your principal and say, so this guy O'Neill says physical education is the most important thing, and academic achievement is tied to physical education, and on and on and on. How come we're not doing any of that in our school? And what do you mean why we can't do this? We don't have time or we don't have money. We have tons of time because it's the most important subject. We have tons of money because we don't need, competitive sports should be the purview of the community, not of the school. And we have tons of money because if you break down the numbers for obesity, in 2019, America spent $173 billion in obesity, 173 billion with a B. So if we think of 15 billion of that as children, that's $1,000 per child, $1,000 per child due to obesity. That's what we can't afford. We can afford PE for every kid every day, doing it the way I talk about. But we can't afford to continue to let these poor kids. And I just met with an insurance company executive the other day, and a huge amount of the payments for children, because remember, they have high blood pressure and they have pre-diabetes and stuff, but that's not where the money is right now. The money is that they're spending is on mental health issues. And these kids have mental health issues because they've lost their connection to Mother Nature. They've lost their physical identity. And that's why we have all that. So that's what we have to do.
So Mike, my crazy idea for the time where you're still continuing on with some of your marketing and connecting to important people for your book is to consider, with your pal Sifu Slim here, wherever I am on the globe, is writing one that is for kids. Let's say kids age 10 to 12. We pick an age where kids might still read a book. And it's an interactive, fun book, maybe with cartoon drawings, which talks about some of these things that we've distilled down, and it's done in a fun and a simple way, almost like the messages from the TV show Davy and Goliath from when we were kids. You remember that one?
Absolutely.
Claymation type pictures.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So the number from my research is 7. If a kid will keep their physical identity, but it's the age of 7 where they really start splitting off, and well, here are the athletes, and then the quote non-athletes unquote, which is absurd to think of at the age of 7. Those kids are the ones that are heading for the couch and heading for the video games. So if we can get that kid right, to get that 5 and 6-year-old and 7-year-old right before they've gotten too tainted, that would be a brilliant concept. Yeah.
And then we have to make sure that they don't shame their older siblings and their parents, coming home and looking at dad on his pizza and beer with a gut out to here. We got to make sure that they're doing it with the Zen and the respectful martial arts attitude. So we've got our work cut out, but I'm willing to revisit that in April. I've got a bunch of projects from now until then, but let's reconnect and see what we can flesh out then. And if you do find someone who knows the aging process on a cellular level
Yeah.
and has done some research on that, let's try to plug them in for a conversation. And I'm going to pass your information on to someone who wants to do a panel discussion about some of the things that we've talked about on health and wellness, and we'll see what we can do. And I'm good with our interview today. Any last comments from you, Dr. Dan?
No, that's great, Sifu. I really enjoyed it. I would just say again, survivalofthefit.net. There's a lot of good information there, but there's so much good information out there. And again, there is no disagreement. When we give these presentations, right? Nobody comes up and say, "Oh, Sifu, you don't know what you're talking about." I tried doing some exercise. I felt terrible. Nobody disagrees. The other thing everybody agrees with is that the children today aren't having as much fun as we used to have. They're not playing the way we used to play. And so it's totally nonpartisan concept. So yeah, I just couldn't agree more. And I can only talk and think about this stuff for days at a time. So anytime you want, or if there's anybody who I connect with, I'd love that.
I'll put your information in the comments below the
Great.
video on YouTube, and mention your book, etc. And let's keep the network of Dan and Dan Egan, the skier, you and me, and I'll try to put some more people into that group, and we'll see what we can learn from each other and how we can advance this activism of physical movement and wellness and being intelligent, doing the right thing. That's important. So I'm Sifu Slim with Dr. Dan O'Neill from New Hampshire, and we're looking forward to some thumbs up on the YouTube and your questions. Any questions that you leave, we'll try to respond to. And I'm at theagingathlete.com, and I'm always looking for other wellness athletes, therapeutical people, and I'm opening up my show to good thinkers, good thought leaders, kind of like the Joe Rogan show does. So please feel free to reach out through my website and respond in that. And until we meet again, thanks a lot, Dr. Dan. We'll see you around the bend.